Guys, welcome back to Ruins on a Hill Media, where forgotten and neglected truths are unearthed. And so, welcome as well to this video, which is Feelings Are Like Smoke Alarms. And so, for those of you who've not met me yet, my name is Greg Handleton. I'm a licensed professional clinical counselor in the state of Ohio, and I've been working in the mental health field since 1989 and worked with lots of people over the years. And I've just learned a lot of things over the years and working with people at the deepest levels, just when you're sitting in a counseling room with folks and you're dealing with just extreme brokenness and pain and issues and sin and all, everything. So I want to share some things, and this video is just one little piece of that pie. And so what I'd like to do is, with each video, define my audience. And so for this video, what would be great is if I could reach as many people as possible, because my goal is to help to increase people's emotional and relational, and to some degree, spiritual intelligence. And in increasing people's intelligence in these areas, my goal is to then help equip and to hopefully provide some basis for skill development. And can't say enough about that, how important it is to gain skills in these areas for lots and lots of good reasons. And so, in thinking about feelings and emotions, I'm going to hit some basic points. Then I'm going to define a primary problem. And then I'm going to use the smoke alarm metaphor to really make the illustration. And then I'm going to go a little bit deeper with one last illustration that will wrap us up. So, first things first, we have to understand that having emotions is part of what the Bible says about us, mankind being created in His image. And by the way, I am going to share unapologetically some biblical things. But if you're not a Christian, I would encourage you to just hang in there. It's not going to be super deep and real heavy with this video, and I really think you're going to benefit from the total package of this video. So hang in there, okay? But understanding that emotions are part of how we reflect the image of God built into the very core of our being. And so emotions are part of that. God has emotion, and being created in His image means we have emotion as well. And so some other quick thoughts about emotions. Emotions on a real basic level provide us with information. If we think about it, when we're feeling them, we might not be thinking that way. We might not be consciously aware of that. But time and time again, as I work with people in the counseling room and in the counseling relationship, countless times I'm helping people to take a step back from their emotions and ask some real basic questions. And one of them is, what are my emotions telling me about the situation? And is what they are telling me accurate or not? That's really important. Okay? So emotions provide us with information, either truth-based or not so much truth-based information about the situation, about ourselves, about a lot of things going on. And so, of course, then related to that is emotions reveal exactly how we are interpreting a situation, either good or bad, positive or negative. So if I'm out on the street corner and I see a dog get hit by a car, and I'm there with my friend, and my friend freaks out, and they just immediately burst into tears. Their interpretation, their emotion is coming from how they're interpreting the event. They're interpreting the event that this is absolutely horrible. This is an absolutely tragic loss. And that is rooted in their belief system. And their belief system may say something like, dogs are, precious, and dogs are, maybe even in their belief system are as precious as any human being. Therefore, if a dog gets hit by a car, this is tragic. Some friends of mine are going to chuckle at this, but I might be standing there not laughing. I'm not laughing at the dog getting hit. But I'm not as likely to cry and freak out, right? Why? Because my interpretation is much different. I don't particularly love dogs. I'm not an animal person on that level in the sense of, they're like central to my life and vital to my daily existence and things like that. So my interpretation is much less rigid or emotionally charged. I don't have a belief system where I have belief statements that have to do with the dogs or animals having the same value as a human life. So I'm not gonna freak out like my friend is. Okay. So our emotions reveal exactly how we're interpreting a situation, and ultimately they reveal our core belief system. I'm going to skip this next one, save it for last. And then an emotion will point us back to its source. So where there's smoke, there's a fire, right? And so every emotion does point to the belief / interpretation that fuels it. In other words, the only reason we're feeling something is because we first believe something, because we first have a belief buried down in our subconscious somewhere. And so we try to follow emotions back to their source, back to the belief. So, a child who was abused, and then as an adult they feel guilty about the abuse. They feel a lot of shame. If we follow the shame and the guilt back to its source, it's rooted in a belief that I deserved it, I'm no good, I'm a piece of crap, I did something to deserve this abuse. In other words, the emotions will reveal the belief system. Also, especially with anger, but emotions in general, but especially with anger, emotions can reveal our idols. So, if I get really ticked off when the Cincinnati Bengals lose, I could possibly have the Bengals up on too high of a pedestal in my heart and in my mind. So emotions will point to our idols and reveal our idols and the things that let us down and cause us to react and get all upset. Of course, emotions are part of, what we think of as it's part of how we know that we're alive, that we're not just robots, but just having emotions is part of living, part of the living experience. So, and then two more. Emotions were never meant to dictate our decisions. Okay, and this is super important in today's day and age, right? Because this is the world we live in now, especially here these last 5 years or so. It's just really become obvious that in our culture, if you feel it, then anything you say or do because of your feelings about something, what you say and what you do are justified. You're totally justified in tearing somebody down and all that because, I feel like my point is valid and you hurt my feelings or whatever. The emotion then drives our decisions, our reactions, and more than ever, people are buying into that, and people aren't challenging that too much anymore in our general culture. So, and then the last one is, I wanted to just say that emotions are, again, if God designed them to really reveal some things and share and give us, point back to what our beliefs are and reveal some information about how we're interpreting things. I believe God also created our emotions as a vehicle for worship and a vehicle for intimacy, to experience the joy of healthy intimacy with God and with our spouse and with friends as well on different levels. So it's a whole other topic, but you understand my point. And then this last point is emotions are distorted by two things, sin and pain. So in my book, Jaden's Heart, A Parable of the Inner Journey, I describe what I call the sin and pain engine. And in Jaden's life, the pain that he experiences then becomes fuel for sinful reactions to things that are going on in his life. And then his sinful reactions create painful consequences, so create more pain. And out of that pain, he sins. So it's this vicious cycle. And together, those two forces really drive his behavior. And so I call it the sin and pain engine. It's a fictional book, by the way, where definitely my main goal through the story of Jaden's life is to provide a vehicle for people to grasp some of the inner workings of the human emotional heart and spiritual heart. The narrator of the story is his heart, as if his heart was a separate character. So that's the idea, is that our emotions are distorted, actually 24/7. If you think about it, there's never a moment when unresolved pain in our life and inside of us, combined with our sinful tendencies, that those two things aren't constantly exerting a distorting effect on our emotions. And so this is why, well, let me jump down here and we'll get to that. So the problem then is what we call emotional reasoning, which is when I am thinking with my emotions all the time. My emotions, it's like I'm really relying, my emotions become my GPS for life, that how I feel about things is that's all that I'm using to make decisions, And so a classic example is, well, you made me mad, I don't like you anymore, I'm leaving you. Problem is, we have 3 kids together, So when people use emotional reasoning and you take that to an extreme, there's just a lot of damage done in people's lives as a result of that. And so it's the old, if I feel it, it must be true, and not thinking beyond that. This is a big problem. It's a big problem in our human tendency to just sort of default to that mode of living where feelings are king, and then my reactions to things, I'm not stopping to analyze anything. I'm just living through emotion. And so this ties in with what I think is a myth, or I guess a false philosophy or a false ideology, which is the old just follow your heart ideology. And when I look at what's lurking, like I just mentioned, sin and pain are two of the big things that are lurking inside a human heart. When I look inside a human heart, and I unpack that in the counseling room with people, I'm not always thrilled when people are following their hearts, because, if we think about it, all the pain that is caused in relationships starts with distorted thinking, distorted emotions, and how the sin and pain engine is driving a person to act out in ways that are self-destructive or destructive to other people. And so, the emotional reasoning, the problem with emotional reasoning is, well, I'm just following my heart. I'm just following what I feel is best. That can take you down a path of destruction and a path that you might later regret. And so this is why we have to challenge what's in our hearts, identify, challenge, and replace what's in our hearts, with help, with God's help, with the help of people who are healthy and stable. So, part of this philosophy then, if I feel it must be true, I think children today especially are growing up seeing adults acting on this philosophy. And so they're being taught by example now more than ever that feelings are king. So that training is hard to untrain yourself or untrain someone else who has been operating out of this philosophy their whole life. They're not going to see anything wrong with it. If life is getting harder and harder, and you or I can look at their life and say, well, it's because you're reacting to everything and your emotions you're getting carried away with your emotions and you're making poor decisions because of how you're feeling. Their tendency is going to be to just blame someone else and rather than really look at what's going on. A video I'm going to do soon using another metaphor is the metaphor of the treasure map, and this is going to get more at the cognitive, the thinking error side of this whole topic. And right now I'm focusing more on the emotional side. And so underneath every behavior is a thought or some kind of thought pattern or thought process. And underneath our thoughts are our core beliefs. Okay, and we talked about that a few minutes ago. So unfortunately then, we all have come to a place. No one is exempt from this. Okay? We've all gotten to a place where without realizing it, we are operating out of some believed lies. Okay? We all have falsehood that's gotten encoded into our belief system one way or another, some good, some bad, some somewhat neutral, but we've ended up believing some lies, and when we believe them, a lot of times they lie dormant. And again, I'm going to refer to my book because this is actually at the core of my book, is how these believed lies play out in Jaden's life. And so for us as well, these believed lies operate under the radar. They operate at a subconscious level. But when someone says something or does something that offends us, again, where there's smoke, there's a fire. Why are we offended? Because a core belief just got violated. And so sometimes when someone is reacting to an extreme level and other people are like, why is this person going off over this little thing? It's often because of a believed lie. So we can come up with a million examples, but for example, if I believe the falsehood or the lie that I can't be happy unless everyone I know likes me. Wow, so I can be cruising along just fine, but the moment someone acts in a way that violates that belief, boom, my emotion's going to come up. And this is why in the Bible in 2 Corinthians 10:5 talks about things that rise up against us, that rise, or not against us, rise up against the knowledge of God. That was pretty. Okay, I gotta show you my little helper. Little piggy. He's my little phone suction holder upper. And he failed. He's not getting any truffles tonight. So let me see if I can reattach the little purple wonder. Hold on. Don't you just love YouTube? You get to watch people struggle in various ways. Sometimes with little plastic components. Oh gosh, now we're leaning. I'm just going to have to hold it. Okay. Thanks, Pig, for your efforts tonight, but you're fired. Okay, so where was I before the purple pig? So believed lies. Okay, so 2 Corinthians 10:5 refers to this problem of falsehood that rises up against the knowledge of God, or strongholds that rise up. And that it's referring to belief systems and ideologies that are not congruent with God's word, not congruent with God's truth. And so then we are invited, God invites us to participate in the renewing of our minds. So like I said, I'm going to talk about that a little bit more with the treasure map metaphor. But for now, just to know that we are participants in the renewal and transformation process. And how we can do that is follow the smoke back to the fire and identify the core beliefs, the things that really drive our behavior. When we start to analyze where our emotions are coming from and really get specific about false beliefs that are unhealthy, and that when they get offended or violated in some way, then we're reacting in ways that are unhealthy. So we need to identify them and then challenge them, not just sort of go along for the ride anymore. But we challenge them, and then with God's help and the help of others, we begin to replace them. And that can be really hard. But it can be done, and day by day, little by little, step by step. And so let's talk about the smoke alarms. You ready? All right. So, what is a smoke alarm designed to do? It is designed to detect smoke in the air. Okay, so let's say you're lying in bed and it's 3 a.m. and the smoke alarm out in the hall goes off. And you're lying there, you wake up instantly. Let's talk first about an appropriate response. We all know the appropriate response. You get up, you begin to investigate safely. You touch the door handle, the doorknob very quickly to see if it's hot. It's not hot, you open the door. And so you are investigating the alarm to find out if it's a false alarm or a legitimate alarm. When your emotions are, quote unquote, going off, it's now an opportunity to investigate. Okay? Is this a legitimate alarm going off inside of you, or is it in some way a false or illegitimate alarm? And so let's say you get out in the hall and you don't smell anything. You turn on some lights. Maybe you're checking to see if there's any smoke that might be revealed with some light. You don't see any now. You check out the whole house and there's nothing. And so now you realize, okay, this was a false alarm. I guess the electronics went bad in the alarm, the smoke alarm. And your adrenaline had risen, so maybe you get, you take some deep breaths, you get a warm glass of milk, whatever, you got to get relaxed. Because what's the appropriate response now? Initially, the appropriate response was to be alarmed and to put some energy into the situation so that you're not just being passive, but you are taking some appropriate action. Now, God designed our bodies with this amazing nervous system, and it's really has two major parts, the sympathetic and the parasympathetic nervous system. And so your nervous system is designed like an alarm to go off in reaction to real danger. So that's like when the smoke alarm is going off for a legitimate reason, like, oh yeah, there is a fire. But your nervous system will also go off in reaction to perceived danger or illegitimate danger. In other words, you think there's something really bad happening, but there's not really anything as bad as your nervous system is telling you. So this is why people who have PTSD have a really hard time because they tend to overreact to little things that make their heart, mind, body, and brain think that their life is in danger, like imminent death, when really they're not in that much danger. And so you drink some milk, you take some deep breaths, maybe you listen to some music or something, you say a prayer, and you go back to bed because it was a false alarm. Now, the other side of that coin is the alarm goes off. You get up, you touch the door handle. It's not hot, but you smell smoke. You open the door, you really smell smoke. Now you know that the alarm is going off for a very legitimate reason. And it would be asinine to stay in bed. So there's two errors that we make with our emotions. We make the mistake of not responding to the information that our emotions are giving us when we need to be responding. And then the second error is overreacting and over-responding when we really don't need to, when we really can stay relaxed and let the situation roll off our back and not get to us. So those are the two errors that we make. And so the alarm goes off, you smell smoke, you scream at the top of your lungs, you get your family members out while you're calling 911, and then you're maybe grabbing the safe box with your birth certificate in it. You get out the window or out the door. So that's an appropriate response to the alarm. And so we have to understand that, again, the challenge here is that our emotions tend to be automatic. If if I'm sitting at work and my coworker walks in and they see me sitting there and they stomp on my foot as hard as they can, and they're looking me in the eye like I meant to do it. Do I have any choice about the nerve impulse that's going to travel from my foot to my brain in about 2 nanoseconds? No, I have no choice about that. It's just automatic. It's an automatic physiological sequence of events. Pain is going to get to my brain before I know what's going on. And I'm going to feel it before I know what I'm even thinking about, what just happened. Right? And I think that it is also equally true that our emotions actually are just about as automatic as the physical part. Maybe not quite as automatic, but at the most, like in a situation like that, I think at the most you might have like 2 seconds before the emotion is just going to, also come flooding into your heart and your mind. So it takes some really strong really heightened awareness and a strong commitment to become a person who gains mastery over their emotions. In Genesis, God said to Cain, "Beware, sin is crouching at your door, but you must master it." And that's really what we're talking about here. Cain had the opportunity. I'm going to be a good therapist here. He had the opportunity to process his feelings with God and with his parents, before murdering his brother. He had opportunity to take some time to process things and get some feedback and identify, challenge, and replace what he was thinking and feeling that was so distorted, and replace those things with healthier things. He really did have opportunity, but he blew it. He just went with the emotion and took a rock and bashed his brother in the head, and that was the first murder. And so this is so vital for everyone. no one's exempt from this. We have to understand just how vital it is that we slow down and start asking some critical questions in our lives, day by day, moment by moment sometimes. As emotions come up, what is it, a legitimate alarm or a false alarm? The problem is, too, that we become very loyal to our reactions because our reactions have tended to become defining elements of who we are and how people see us. If I develop a reputation as being a tough guy and an angry tough guy who nobody wants to mess with, now my persona has now developed around my unhealthy reactions to false alarms and my unhealthy reactions to legitimate alarms, again, distorted by sin and pain. So no one's exempt. We all have to, in order to mature, in order to grow up emotionally and relationally and spiritually, we have to master our emotions. And I'm going to do another video referring to the metaphor of the surfer. And I'm not the only person or, therapist or author out there who has used the surfer metaphor. I'm gonna share my version of it in a separate video here soon. And so learning how to ride out our emotions, learning how to get on the surfboard and stay on it is a vital skill as we ask some vital questions about, where's my emotion coming from? Is it really rooted in a truthful, an understanding of the truth about a situation, or am I operating out of a believed lie? All those kinds of things can help us to grow and mature, so that as we create space to think and to gather more information and to, look at our options and things, that's how we mature and grow emotionally and relationally and spiritually. So one last example. So the question is, why is it so hard? Why is it so hard to identify, challenge, and replace unhealthy, toxic reactions to things? And so, why are we so committed to overreacting to false alarms? And I think there's an obvious answer, and it's the answer of how emotional pain, kind of gets into our gut, gets into the meat of our heart, so to speak, and just dwells there and resides there. It provides fuel to keep the believed lies going, and so it just becomes part of that cycle. And so let's say you and I are walking down the street and we see this guy pull up in a Ferrari, and he gets out of his Ferrari, brand new, 2017, all the bells and whistles. The guy's dressed in a gorgeous suit. He's got patent leather shoes like you've never seen before. He's got rings and just meticulous. This guy's groomed meticulously like a Hollywood actor right before filming. So I look at you and I say, see that guy over there? He's rich. I bet he doesn't care about anybody but himself, right? And, you look at me like, okay, like, where'd that come from? And, I'm like, yeah, he's rich. He doesn't care. He's a jerk. He's a jerk. And I might use some choice words to describe him, right? So, what are you going to say to me? You're probably going to say, what are you talking about? We don't even know this guy. I mean, you don't know that he doesn't care about anybody. Why are you saying this? Well, it's just obvious, So basically you get the impression that I'm not letting this go, And so after a couple of minutes, you get bold and you say, all right, okay, Greg, tell you what, I'm going to ask him because you're not dropping it. And I'm like, okay, you ask him. So I push you towards him, You say, excuse me, sir, we just had a question for you, and my friend's a little bit weird. Um, he's just under the impression that, you're obviously a wealthy guy, but he's under the impression that you don't care about anybody but yourself. Is that true? And the guy, taken aback a little bit, but he's like, well, okay, but the fact is I do care about others. I have a family and kids, and actually right now, I'm taking a check to United Way, and I like to do that because they do good in the community, and I like to see how people are helped, and I get to meet some of these folks sometimes, and I do some volunteering with United Way, and it's a great experience because I get to see people's lives benefiting, and it's just a great feeling for all of us. And then so you look at me and you say, "See, I told you." And the guy walks off with his check and goes into the United Way office a few doors down, and the door shuts, and I say to you, "You believe that crap? I bet there's a news crew in there waiting for him right now, and he just likes everyone in the office to be all, oh, look, he's back with his big money check, ooh." And you look at me like I have two heads, right? Because where's this coming from? Well, now there's a believed lie somewhere lurking at in the murky depths here, right? And so let's say, for example, that and by the way, this can be so strong. These emotional commitments that we experience to false beliefs can be so strong. I mean, the guy could give me his Ferrari, hand me the keys, and go to the BMV and be back in 20 minutes with the title. Hand it to me, and then walk away. And I'm like, I bet he's got 5 more in his garage. He's just trying to look good. Look at all the people on the street corner looking at him. Right? So that's how committed we can be to our overreactions to false alarms. And so let's say that, and I'm making this story up, but let's say that I grew up really poor. My dad worked hard, but, didn't bring home a whole lot of money. And, mom was taking care of us kids and stuff, and she did some part-time stuff, but, dad was trying to be the breadwinner. So, but occasionally I would see dad getting on the phone with his brother, his wealthy, rich brother. And I never heard the conversations. But as a kid, I was impressed with how my uncle, it was obvious that he wasn't going to help. And I could hear in my dad's tone his hurt and disappointment. And sometimes I could hear my uncle being really loud on the other end of the phone. And maybe I'd catch little bits and pieces. Maybe he was calling my dad names and calling him a loser, or lazy and things like this. And so that then created an emotional wound for me as a child. And guess what? The wound is fueled and sustained by a believed lie. And the lie can be a lot of things, but so in this example of you and I walking down the street and the guy with the Ferrari, I've obviously come to believe that all rich people are jerks and monsters, and I am justified in hating all of them because it's true. It's true that all rich people are jerks and monsters. This happens with little things as well. You go to McDonald's and you get, you're really looking forward to some hot French fries, and you go through the drive-through with your friends, and you get the bag and drive off, and you get the fries and they're cold, and it's such a big disappointment because you got the munchies and you just want some hot fries, but now it's possible, but it's possible that you are now going to walk away from that experience believing a believed lie, the lie that I'll never get any good hot food from McDonald's ever again. So 3 weeks later, someone says, hey, let's go get So McDonald's, you're just likely to automatically, no, not McDonald's sucks. And again, the believed lie could be within 3 weeks easily, can become very subconscious. You're not aware that that's why you're feeling what you're feeling, that you've come to believe. And this is how the brain works. Our brain has a tendency, and I do think it's partly because of our sinful nature, to just overgeneralize the negative to everything. To take a little bit of truth about a situation that really happened. Yeah, I really did get cold fries. But to then sort of add fuel to the fire, it's sort of that sin and pain engine just adding to that false belief and magnifying it and making it grow to where, your friends are like, why are you getting so upset about going to McDonald's? And maybe you can't explain it because it went subconscious on you, and you just know you don't like McDonald's. You just know that let's go somewhere else. I'm not going there, especially if your cold fries gave you food poisoning, right? So that's why it's so hard to identify, challenge, and replace, because we develop these emotional commitments to these core beliefs, these believed lies that get way down deep in our belief system, and they feel true, but they can run our lives into the ground. This is why in Proverbs 14:12, it says, there's a way that seems right to a man, but its end is the way of death. And you could take that right out of the Bible and just put it on a piece of paper in front of you and read that and know that there are things that feel true to me, things that feel right, things that feel true to me, that given, if they're allowed to run their course in my life, will lead not necessarily to physical death, although that can happen depending on what kind of belief you're operating out of, but can just lead to a lot of pain, unnecessary self-destructive things, or things that are hurtful to other people. And so, this is the higher calling. God calls us to participate with Him in the renewal and the transformation of our truly corrupted belief system. And all we have to do is let Him show us what fire the smoke is coming from. So thanks for listening. I hope this is helpful to you in your daily life. My goal is to increase your emotional intelligence a little bit today, and to provide you with an opportunity to develop some skills. And the way that you develop the skill is you slow down, you interrupt your normal reactivity to things, and you go and you talk to someone, you go for a walk, put in some music, calm down, get yourself calmed down. There's no way you're going to process anything or learn anything new when the adrenaline is pumping through your bloodstream. It's just not going to happen. So you got to get calmed, and then give yourself permission to look underneath the hood and to follow the smoke back to the fire, and to get help with that if you need to. And then as the believed lies are revealed, humbly just say, okay, there it is. There's what's been. This is the boil that needs lanced. This is the thing that's been creating so much misery. Now I'm ready to begin to replace it with something healthy, something that's actually more true to my current situation. Just because I got cold French fries 10 years ago doesn't mean that I'm going to get cold French fries today. Today's different. And a lot of people who've been through abuse and such, their belief system is written in concrete because the pain kind of causes that to happen, because the person is afraid if they let go of their survival-based believed lies that they're going to die, because that's what they've been clinging to try to make sense out of their life and try to protect themselves and try to get through day-to-day life. They've been clinging to these believed lies for all those reasons. And the fear of letting those go is tremendous. But they can be replaced little by little with help, with things that are actually more accurate, So I'll end with this acknowledgement, and it's just simply if someone was abused by an older man and they've lived their whole adult life not trusting a single adult man ever, well, when they learn which adult men they can trust and trust with what things, that becomes very liberating, and that's part of the healing process. It's like, oh, I can actually trust this guy with these things about my life, or with these things that we like to do together and such, versus just having brick walls between that person and all the men in the world. You know what I mean? So this is the tip of the iceberg, but thanks for listening, and I hope this has been a good thing for you.